Welcome to another Hawkeye. I'm Dave O'Hara. Glad to be joining you this week. Our buddy Sean Roberts is going to be joining us momentarily from Des Moines. Of course, as you know, Sean, we've had on before, is with KXNO Radio. All things going on in Central and the state of Iowa. Of course, also with iHeart Media. You can find him everywhere on socials as well as online or on the radio. Sean also is the in-game voice, the public address announcer, PA, for the Drake Bulldogs men's basketball. So he brings great knowledge of Ben McCollum and half the team that went from Drake last year to the Iowa Hawkeyes this year. So that'll be upcoming. So we're going to talk Hawkeye football with Sean, but also we're going to talk Hawkeye men's and women's basketball. And of course, in our sports betting segment, I usually have a sports betting expert on, and Sean qualifies to that as well because he talks to as many sharps as I do in the sports betting business. And with all the flap going on right now with sports betting in the world, Sean and I are going to hopefully calm a few nerves and set the record straight on some things. So Sean, my friend, as always, thanks for joining us. Happy Sports Equinox Day yesterday, which was on Monday, October 27th. Today, we record this on late afternoon on Tuesday, October 28th, after the press and media availability today for our Hawkeye assistant coaches. The interesting thing, it's a bye week for the Hawks, but next week the Hawks will play number 6 Oregon at Kinnick Stadium. But Sean, let's you and I talk what happened today. Wow, what a late game last night into this morning for the World Series. So we had Major League Baseball, NFL, NHL, and NBA all on the same day. One day this year, this sports season of 25 and 26. So what a time to be a sports fan, my friend.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, Dave. And this is definitely my favorite time of the year. You know, everyone's like, you know, when the questions come, it's like, what's your favorite time for sports? It's the month of October, because you get playoff baseball, you get the NFL in full swing, college football in full swing, hockey starting up, the NBA starting, college basketball is right around the corner. This is, in my opinion, the best time to be a sports fan. And you got a little example of it yesterday. Like I found myself flipping. I'm a Bulls fan, so I found myself flipping between the Bulls game and the World Series game, checking in on Monday Night Football, also what's going on in the hockey world. It was a great day and night for sports.
Big victory over Minnesota last week, 41-3 at Kinnick. What a crushing game that was. And Sean, this is one of those times where I'd say I'm not even sure the score was indicative of how much of a blowout it was. The Hawkeyes dominated offense, defense, special teams, of course, as always. And the intriguing thing about all this is it was from start to finish. That first drive to start the game was indicative for the rest of the way through, wasn't it, Sean?
Yeah, we were talking about this on my radio show, and my co-host Lucas Strain and I, and we do a thing every Monday where we do love-hate, like what we loved, what we hated. And we both came to the conclusion of what we hated about the win was the fact that they didn't shut them out. Like, that was it. There was nothing, like, they played almost near perfect. Mark Gronowski missed a few passes, but it was a perfect game for the most part for the Hawkeyes, and it was a dominating win. And there's a lot of steam behind this Iowa team right now. I know they're not currently in the AP top 25. They're starting to get some looks. But this is a team, Dave, that if they can get, looking at that win against Minnesota, if they can get this win against Oregon and upset them, I mean, you have to start looking at hypotheticals and a chance for this team to potentially find themselves in a CFP conversation. And I'm always under the impression you got to take it game by game and like all the cliches and stuff like that. Because when you start looking too forward, and I know Kirk Ferentz and that coaching staff won't do that. They're going to look at the game, you know, that is right in front of them. But I know it's easy for fans to start going, well, we get past Oregon, man. And then all of a sudden we beat USC and we're in the playoffs. And it's like, worry about game by game. But yeah. Big win against Minnesota. You love always beating a rival, and you love dominating them the way they did in all facets. You mentioned offense, defense, special teams. They scored touchdowns on all forms that you could possibly score touchdowns, which was awesome to see.
It was interesting today during the press availability. 2 of the 3 coordinators, and I looked through, I didn't see Tim Lester mention him at all, but LeVar Woods, special teams coordinator, Phil Parker, defensive coordinator, and Tim Lester, of course, offensive coordinator. LeVar and Phil talked about Zach Gluckner, which Tim Lester I didn't see did. He talked more about Gronowski and the great job he's doing and having a fullback and quarterback, so to speak. But Lutmer was talked about with LeVar Woods is, hey, he might replace Weegan next year when he's done moving on to the NFL. with Lutmer's return for a touchdown 18 years in a row now, by the way, Sean. The Hawkeye defense has done that. So Phil Parker can no longer call them the No Boys, the Doughboys again. But Zach Lutmer, with that return, has talked about, potentially backing up Wheaton at special teams. And then Phil Parker just said how great he's been. Sean, you and I have heard all year, PFF, Pro Football Focus, and all the other experts are talking about Zach Lutmer on a national, getting ready for the NFL level. This kid has just splashed out of Rock Rapids. He and Reese, is this awesome or what? Reese Vanderzee and Zach Lutmer from Rock Rapids, Iowa, Central Lyon High School in Northwest Iowa in the corner. Who would have thought these two guys would be your touchdown leaders on Saturday?
That's right. No, I think Lutmer is he's a fun, exciting player. We get a lot of the conversation, that I don't want to compare anybody to Cooper DeJean because of what the success that Cooper's had. And, you don't know how this can play out. But if you're an Iowa fan, you have to look at it and go, hey, man, like if we could somehow get even remotely close to Cooper with Lutmer, like that's a win, right? And obviously his return for an interception there for a pick six. You love the way that he was able to do that. That absolutely can work in the return game, and it's good that they're already looking at that because there's a good chance that Cade Weechen is going to move on. So you're going to have to replace him, and looks like they got someone that can handle that. And you got to see a little bit of it on Saturday.
The intriguing thing to what you're saying as well is Cooper DeJean, great social media game, put out some smiley face emojis when Weechen returned the touchdown. And, Lutmer again and Reese Vanderzee, good to have him back and healthy. And great throw, Brad Gronowski, great catch over a former Hawkeye, John Nestor. So we'll be back to close out the show for two more segments with Sean Roberts. I'm Dave O'Hara. This is Hawkeye. Back with more in just a few moments.
Hawkeye is brought to you by Better Edge, your ultimate social betting marketplace. With no VIG, you're bound to win more on every bet on Better Edge. Founded by Hawkeye alum James Siles and proud Iowan Greg Kieski, Better Edge delivers an unmatched betting experience. Plus, what's not to love when they're committed to supporting charities and children's hospitals near you? Join the action now. Sign up at betteredge.com/Hawkeye and get $10 to start winning more today. Better Edge, where your social betting means your bets go further and you win more.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Thanks and pleased, as always, to have our buddy Sean Roberts joining us. He's taking time out of a very busy schedule with his little son at home right now, 3 months, getting ready for Halloween. His wife's birthday today as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, late afternoon on October 28th. Sean, my friend, thanks as always for joining us and staying over for the whole show. Let's talk Hawkeye men's and women's basketball. Let's start with the women first. They have a game this upcoming Monday at Carver Hawkeye Arena. Yeah, I know some of these non-con games, people want to look at them, but and say, really? They got an exhibition game before that game, and then they have a couple of early games. It's going to be interesting to see Jan Jensen with all this talent she's brought in, and more to come next year and the following year with top 10 nationally ranked players coming in. But I'm anxious to see Addie Deal in a real game situation. Layla Hayes, the 6'5" center from Alaska. Besides all the returning, Hannah Stolke and Kylie Feuerbach and all the other veterans coming back from last year. Sean, I'm very excited for this early season for the women and men, but let's start with the women first, please.
Yeah, it's going to be. I'm interested to see how Jan Jensen handles all this, all the talent, right? Like year one last year, you're coming off of replacing Lisa Bluter, Hall of Fame legend. Caitlin Clark's not there anymore. And so you're sitting there going like, what's this going to look like now, right? And like Iowa had a good year. It wasn't, I don't think what they ultimately wanted it to be, but they had a good year. I think now, like I'm most interested to see Addie Deal play when it comes to like that's my excitement level is to see how she performs because that's a highly sought after recruit that's going to be here for the Iowa Hawkeyes and Jan Jensen and just how that second year, like what did Jan learn from year one as being a head coach and what she's going to be able to do now in year two. I expect big things from this team and we'll see some things early on and what this team is going to look like. And again, just like we were talking in the football segment, you're going to see a team grow throughout the season. And so that's what I'm going to be interested to see how Jan's able to navigate that now with some new faces, but some faces from the Caitlin Clark days and that carryover.
To your point, great point. And I've said this in past shows, and I'll say it again to you, and I alluded to it earlier in this segment. One basketball, all that talent. Good luck, Jan. Trying to juggle all those personalities and basketballs. The other thing, Sean, is she mentioned I'm going to play 8 or 9 or 7 or 8. Now, early in the season, she's going to be playing a lot of players, especially the young ones, to see where they are. But Sean, they got games upcoming, before the first of the year against Baylor, against UConn. So we're going to get a measure very quick. And of course, it's like with the men, they play 2 Big Ten games before the first of the year, before they get into the full Big Ten schedule. So we're going to get an idea of what this Hawkeye team, like you mentioned, they're going to get better as the year progresses. But we're going to find out pretty quick what this team looks like.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm a big fan of having these conference games before.
I like it.
A couple of them, just so you can see like where you stand and if you got to make some adjustments. I'm also a fan of playing meaningful basketball games early on in the year. I understand why you play some of the lower level opponents early on in the season, because you want to see what your team has. You want to build confidence. You want to rack up a few wins, right? When it comes to RPI and all that stuff. But give me some meaningful basketball. And I like I like that they're going to be doing that, because it'll be a good test and it's a good thing to see what that team's going to be made of.
I like what you're saying there, because I agree, and I kind of jumped in there and said I like it. To your point, this isn't like football where 1 or 2 losses and you're out of the CFP. You're only playing 12 games during the regular season or so. In basketball, you're playing 30 plus. And then you get into the conference, meat of the season, you're playing 18, 20 games, depending on your conference. We're going to get a good flavor for what's going on here. And to your point as well, most teams, when they win a national title or they're in the Final Four, they've got a handful of losses. This is the occasional undefeated or 1 or 2 losses. But for the most part, I agree with you. I think that and who loves, and TV, of course, does what TV does. And I always make this joke, Sean, but it's not really a joke because it's true. Whenever anybody says it's not about the money, there's only one thing that it's truly about: the money. And so they have moved all these. Remember Thanksgiving week when we were younger? That was the big thing, right? We were getting all these big games, the Alaska shootout, the Hawaii shootout, and Chaminade, and all those great games. Well, now those are happening in early to mid-November. So TV has moved those up over the past 10 years. When they used to be Thanksgiving week, now it's happening a couple weeks before. But I agree with you. I love meaningful games. Let's transition into the men's basketball team and Ben McCollum. Again, a group that you've got experience with last year, again, being the in-game public address announcing voice, the PA voice for the Drake Bulldogs. You know Coach McCollum pretty well, and you've had him on your show regularly. And also since he's been at Iowa, but also some of the players. Bennett Sturtz, of course, getting all the preseason accolades. And we're just hearing what a grind practice is and how this team can't wait to play games. And we'll know on next Tuesday, November 4th, with their first game, and then the following Friday.
Yeah, I think the thing when it comes to Coach McCollum now is he's done, since he was hired at Iowa, he's done everything right. Like he's had he's out in the community, he's shaking hands, he's kissing babies, he's going to football games, he's interacting with the student body. He's done everything right. And I think that's what he had to do. And I think that's what Beth Getz kind of wanted as with the new head coach. Now you're going to get to know Ben McCollum. You're going to get to see Ben McCollum on the sideline. You're going to get to see the shirt and tie. He's been very good to me, and he's been very nice to me in my short time knowing him here in Des Moines, and even now in Iowa City. And so I hope nothing but the best for him. But what I'm excited for people to see is just how much of a basketball nut he is. Like he is a full-on basketball nut. Again, big and cliches with me joining you today, but he eats, sleeps, drinks basketball. Like ball is life. But I love the way he coaches, and he was a lot of fun here in Des Moines, and obviously had success with Drake. And a lot of those guys have followed him, not only from Northwest Missouri State to Drake, but now Drake to Iowa. And I'm excited to see also how Bennett is able to play, because Bennett Sturtz, this is a kid that coming out of high school didn't have any Division I offers, went to Northwest Missouri State, has success there for a couple of years, comes to Drake, ends up being the MVC player of the year, then becomes the #1 transfer portal, prospect out there. And now he remains still here in Iowa. I'm excited to see him against Big Ten competition in that high level Division I competition, because it's one thing to watch him, play in the Missouri Valley. And I'm not knocking the Valley because I love the Valley. But to play in the Valley, and you got to see it, in his games against Kansas State last year, and in the NCAA tournament against Missouri. Like, he can play with the big boys, and I'm excited to see him do that on a pretty regular basis at Iowa once they get through kind of these preseason games and then get into Big Ten play. But this is going to be a fun team to watch. It will be interesting to see how they navigate the size aspect. Like, I know that they just went down and they had that scrimmage against Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a team that beat Drake to knock him out of the NCAA tournament with a bunch of these guys, right? And so, like, I remember last year sitting in Wichita watching that game, and no offense to Cam Menyal, but watching him kind of get dominated down low against Toppin and that Texas Tech team. So how does the size match up for this Iowa team? And what are they going to be able to do when they get into Big Ten play, which is a very obviously solid basketball conference? And you play against a team like Purdue, and it feels like every year Purdue's got an 8-foot center that is really good at basketball. So it is going to be exciting to watch these guys play.
Hey, no problem, by the way. No need to apologize for your use of cliches or quote unquote your words overused, because they're cliches for a reason. They're true. And Ben McCollum is checking all those boxes and the intensity. And if you don't play defense, you're not playing for him. But I also think this team is going to be fun to watch for the simple fact that they can score. You mentioned K-State Drake playing against K-State last year. They're familiar with Brendan Housen. He can light it up. And now he's with the Hawkeyes. He can shoot it from the outside. I mentioned Fulgaris earlier. He's an majorly offensive threat. And Cooper Koch, I'm anxious to see what he can do coming off injury. And he's the only holdover from the Van McCaffrey regime from last 15 years. So it's going to be interesting to see going into his redshirt freshman year what Cooper can do. The other thing, to your point about Bennett Sturts, it is amazing to see his progression and his talent and his maturity. Because when I was at Fox Sports Radio in Kansas City, and I've lived there for almost 20 years until I came back to Iowa, so I'm very familiar with Liberty, Missouri, not North Liberty, Iowa, but Liberty High School or Liberty area where Bennett Sturts was from, the North Kansas City area. And I knew some people that saw him play in high school, and same thing to your point. He just got better and better. He went to Northwest Missouri State, a Division II power in very nearby, Maryville, Missouri. And then he goes to Drake, sets the world on fire as the Valley Player of the Year, as you mentioned, as a junior. So, Sean, to me, and I know for you covering Hawkeyes all these years, it's great to have another National Player of the Year candidate, at least preseason. We can mention the Murray twins and a couple years ago, Luka Garza years before that. Jordan Bohannon brought a lot of acclaim to the program, and same with Joe Wieskamp. So now we've got Bennett Sturts. So this is going to be a fun one all year long. Don't know how good this team is going to be, to your point, too. They're being projected middle of the road in the Big Ten by a lot of the pundits. So we'll see how that plays out. But great coverage on basketball. Sean, let's close out talking a little sports betting. He is Sean Roberts, afternoon host at KXNO Radio in Des Moines, Central Iowa. Always appreciate having Sean on. We'll be back to close out the show with Hawkeye. I'm Dave O'Hara. I'm back with more in just a few moments.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman from Mershman Seeds. Substitutions cost you money. Why take their seconds when you can have our first choice? Here's Ben Paper to tell you more about Mershman Power Core Enlist Corn.
We are way ahead of Big Seed on this one. This corn has 4 different post-herbicide tolerances, multiple modes of action for above-ground pests, and it is some of the highest yielding corn genetics that are out on the market today.
If you're one of the many that got substituted on your corn hybrid last spring, contact your local Mershman Seeds dealer today and ask them about Power Core and Enlist Corn. From Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye. I'm Dave O'Hara. Pleased to be joined by Sean Roberts. He was kind enough to join us for the whole show, so thanks to Sean for that. It's always great to have him on, getting his perspective. He brings it to the show from all of Iowa, Central Iowa, specifically KXNO Radio in Des Moines, where he hosts the afternoon show as the program director there as well as being very in tune to college basketball. Sean is the in-game voice for the public address announcer for Drake men's basketball, got a lot of experience with Ben McCollum and the players from last year going to the Hawkeyes. So it's been great catching up on Hawkeye football, Hawkeye men's and women's basketball, the first 2 segments with Sean. We'll close out talking sports betting, as I usually have a sports betting segment on. And this week, Sean, you're doubling because you have a lot of sports betting experts on your show like I do here. And with this recent sports betting scandal going on with Chauncey Billups and, players now, and especially Miami Heat, former players in Jones and now as an assistant coach, one would say to themselves, well, Terry Rozier for the Miami Heat, is going to make and has made $26.4 million. Why would he risk everything for a $200,000 bet? And what is this going to do to basketball betting or sports betting in general? Sean, I'm curious on your takeaway, because my feeling has been, and talking to some of the experts I've talked to, curious to get your take on this. Sports betting, if it weren't for the sports books, the apps, whether they be just social betting or actual sports books apps or people going to the sports books, they're the ones who actually tipped off the NBA by saying, hey, here's some unusual activity. If it wasn't for them being the regulators, so to speak, and turning it over to the feds, and it goes much deeper than just that. Of course, with the card skimming with Chauncey Billups and mob families and mob names being brought in now. God, we haven't talked about the mob since the mid-'90s with the movie Goodfellas. I mean, or Casino, the movie. When's the last time you talked about mob families in sports betting, at least in Sports Talk Radio? But it's interesting to me, Sean, that you take a look at this and people want to say, I'm kind of squeamish now about sports betting. I think now's the best time because it is very regulated and very safe to bet. And I think the integrity of the games are still there because some of these malfeasance are being tipped off by the books and by the apps.
Yeah, I think when it comes to sports betting, the apps, they're getting caught because of the apps. You can look at baseball, you can look at the NBA now, like you can look at the NFL. All these players or coaches, I guess I have to put in the conversation now, that have gotten caught with a lot of this stuff. The apps are the ones that have caught it, right? Like, and then they turn it over and there's an investigation and everything like that, but they're the ones that flag it. So if you don't have these apps, then you don't have that proof system, right? That stops some of this stuff. So honestly, like, I don't know. I understand people's like pushback on sports betting and all this, and now you're allowing, college players to be able to bet on all pro sports, and that's not like, that's a different conversation. But I think having the apps involved, I think the apps are a good thing to have. And whether I'm not here to say, people should all love sports betting, but when it comes to professional sports, these apps are actually making a difference, whether it's good or bad. If people are winning money, losing money, they're catching the bad guys. And I would much rather have that than not have it, I guess.
And that's the thing. I'm not here to be a proponent, like you said, of sports books or the apps. But if you want to bet, then bet. But if you don't, and if you feel uneasy, then you shouldn't. And they always say, don't bet with scared money. If you can't lose it, don't bet it, type thing. But I think that's the important thing, is you got to keep the integrity of the games there. And I think if everything, like you said, the proof is in the pudding, and these apps, it's not paperwork anymore. I guess we call it a digital trail now. But you're tracked on everything. So yeah, with Rozier, collecting money from his buddies who collected his $200,000. By taking himself out of a game early for a phantom injury, and I'll use air quotes because he's only accused of this, not guilty yet, but it does not look good for him and Chauncey Billups. And I think many other shoes are going to fall yet, Sean. I think this is early in the investigation, but you still have to look at this and go, wow, you make $26 million a year, over $26 million a year, and you're doing all this for a $200,000 payout. It just does not make sense to me.
Yeah, it's not worth it, and that's kind of been my response to all these gambling investigations. Is it's not worth it when especially if you're a professional sports, like if you're a professional sports player, you're getting paid a lot of money. It's not worth it, right? To now you're going to lose out on millions of dollars instead of a couple 100,000, right? Like it's not worth it. But I'm glad that the apps are there to stop it because and to pick up on it, because who knows, right? Like how much stuff may or may not have been happening before sports gambling became legal, mostly across the country, and having DraftKings, FanDuel, all those type of apps. Who knows what was happening? And now at least there's a tracking system.
Well, and that's the thing when I say, why would you do that? I think a lot of reasons I've been told psychologically is because they're very competitive and they got to take it off the field, even though it's far less money gambling than it is what they make as an athlete professionally, but also of getting away with something and sticking it to an organization or sticking it to the man and trying to get away with something, but also cutting some bread aside or some money aside for some of his buddies. Multiple reasons, doesn't matter the reason, it's just, you're going to get caught. You're not getting away with it, as we both have talked about with the digital trail. Sean, I always appreciate your insights from Hawkeye football today, Hawkeye men's and women's basketball, and the sports betting world. You're bringing it all to us. Folks, there he is, Sean Roberts, afternoon host at KXNO Radio, but the Bench Mob. Let's get the name out there right away. The Bench Mob with Sean Roberts and Lucas Strain, his on-air partner, and it's great stuff. KXNO Radio, part of iHeart Media, which I'm a part of as well. And always want to thank Sean for joining us. He's also the program director there and the in-game voice for the Drake Bulldog men's basketball program, the public address announcer, the PA. So Sean, my friend, it is great to see you. Go celebrate Halloween with your young son and your wife's birthday. And thank you so much for taking time out today and joining us, my friend. Great to see you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Dave.
Truly my pleasure, and you're welcome. For Sean Roberts, I'm Dave O'Hara. Thanks also to our good buddies at Better Edge and BetterEdge.com, Greg Kajewski and James Stiles. I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. That's all from us. Thanks to all of you.